Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you at our FP&A Trends webinar. My name is Olga Rodakova. I'm FP&A professional and FP&A Trends ambassador. I'm happy to facilitate this event today. Our topic for today's event is 2025 FP&A Trends Survey results. We are going to speak about benchmarks, priorities, and best practices. I'm not surprised that this topic has attracted as much as 450 registrations from 56 different countries. That's quite a number. What we can expect today? Today we are going to cover several topics. The first of all, obviously, FP&A Trends Survey, key findings and benchmarks. We will speak about how to get from ambition to execution, how leading FP&A teams turn insights into impact. We will speak about a better path forward for FP&A. We will have conclusions and recommendations and definitely a Q&A session. It's time for me to introduce our speakers for the event. So please join me here on the camera and I will start introductions with you, Michael. Michael Coveney is an analytics thought leader and author, head of research at FP&A Trends Group. Michael is based in London in UK. Michael spent over 40 years in the software analytic business with focus on transforming the planning, budgeting, forecasting, and reporting processes. He's a gifted conference speaker and author, so definitely check his latest book. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Olga, it's a pleasure to be with you.
And I'll introduce second speaker for the event, Pras Chatterjee. Pras is a global product marketing director at OneStream Software. Pras is based in Toronto, Canada. He is a business and financial performance management professional with over 20 years of experience. He is expert with strong finance and information systems knowledge gained in various Fortune 500 organizations. Pras, thank you for being with us today.
Olga, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
I am excited as well to hear the results. Before that, let me thank our technology sponsor, OneStream, for making this survey and this webinar possible. OneStream offers a unified AI-powered platform that helps organizations connect planning, consolidations, reporting, and analytics all in one place. You'll definitely can read more at onestream.com. Meanwhile, let me proudly present a couple of numbers about us, about FP&A Trends Group, and one of them today will definitely be FP&A Trends Survey respondents since 2017, and it has exceeded 2,800 already. Another big number to present today is number of FP&A Trends webinars, and that is 176. And we are increasing this number by one right now. What we can expect at this event, that is 1 hour webinar. We will have 2 interactive polls during the event. We'll have Q&A session at the end, and you can ask questions via the chat box starting right now, so go for it. Presentation is already available in handout section. More than that, you will receive the recording and the presentation after the event. Please take part in the brief survey after this session. Don't leave without filling it. It's literally 30 seconds, but it will help us improve those events even further. I am pretty sure that you are excited to hear answers to many questions, and this event will definitely present key results of the survey, and will answer questions such as what does FP&A best practice look like? What sets high-performing teams apart from the rest? How does the external business environment affect FP&A performance, or where the most of the FP&A time is spent, and even how difficult it is to get to integrated FP&A and how many of us are already there. So many more will be answered today during our event. A bit about our participants, survey participants in numbers. That is ninth year of the survey. And this year we had 459 participants, which adds up to 2,886 participants overall. And that allows us not only get a snapshot of this year, but it allows us to follow trends, spot some deviations, spot some interesting outliers. It allows us to see how all these key parameters develop in time. In terms of survey demographics, it's quite interesting as well. The whole world is presented in the survey, with most of the respondents coming from North America and Europe, 38% from each of those regions. But we have every other region represented as well. We have 8% from Middle East and Africa, 8% of participants from Asia, 5% from South America, and another 3% from Australia and Oceania. In terms of job titles, we have quite broad spectrum of mostly senior practitioners with a director or senior director of finance manager or senior finance manager positions from companies of different sizes. Having said all that, I think it's time for us to actually look at the results. And who can cover that better than Michael Coveney, our thought leader and co-author of the survey? Michael will be speaking about the topic from ambition to execution, how leading FP&A teams turn insights into impact. Michael, let me pass this microphone to you, and the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga. Yes, I've been involved in analysing the survey for the past 7 years, I think it is. This year, the survey, we actually asked 36 questions. And when we analyse the survey, we combine it with all the results from the previous years, and we then see if there's any correlations between answers and the questions, so we can get a good idea of how best performing organisations are performing and what things make them, what do they have in common to the others. Now, if we were to look at the purpose of FP&A, the purpose of FP&A is actually to enable decision-led decision making. I mean, that's why we call it financial planning and analysis, to analyze where we want to go. And if we look at the survey on the right-hand side, you can see this year's survey is 59% of organizations said that the majority, or if not all of their decisions are based on data. And you might notice that this is actually down on last year. What's interesting is that there's a stubborn 10%, it seems to be at that every year, who say that they base very few decisions on data. And to us, the whole point of FP&A is to enable that process to happen. But if you look on the left-hand side, the issues facing FP&A is this. Only 2% of the organizations in the survey say that their FP&A team was optimized to perform. And over half of them said that they were held back by manual work. Now, this is interesting in the day of technology, when we have systems, the availability of systems to really automate a lot of work. And it's not surprising, if you look on the bottom left-hand side, the survey told us that 32%, in fact, the equal problems were inconsistent data and time-consuming manual processes. And so we started to take a look. Okay, so what is it that FP&A need to do in order to improve their capabilities? And for us, there are 5 things that FP&A need in order to perform better. And those 5 areas are these. They need integrated processes. This is where we connect strategic planning with operational planning, with financial planning. They all need to be integrated because they're all part of the same process. Secondly, they need to be able to generate forecasts, accurate forecasts, but not just one forecast, because many things might happen in the future. So it's important that they're able to test those forecasts against different scenarios. A third key thing for an FP&A to do its job properly, it's got to be able to access data, and that data must be trusted. That data also needs to be analyzed by technology systems. So a fourth area for FP&A is actually the technology systems that they use to do their analysis. And finally, the FP&A teams themselves must be skilled to do the analysis and then to interpret the results. So what I'm going to do, there's obviously a lot in the survey, and we're not going to be able to cover it all, but I'm just going to take a quick look at the highlights of these 5 different areas to see how FP&A are performing. So let's start off with the first one, integrated processes. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we found in this year's survey, only 11% of organizations say that their strategic, financial and operational processes are fully aligned. Another 34% said they're technically aligned, but they're routinely disrupted by competing priorities. On the left-hand side of the screen, we ask organizations, how far into ahead can you predict with any degree of accuracy? And it's interesting that only 61% can plan for the next 6 months. And that means that FP&A have got to move away from relying on a single annual plan because they just can't predict that far in advance. And those plans themselves, we find that if like 20% in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, 20% of those organizations say that when they produce a plan, it's a fully integrated P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow, which actually is down from last year. And there are 16% that just rely on planning the P&L. And by not planning the full financial spectrum, what that means is it really opens up the organizations to a question of financial resilience in the future. So that's where we are with integrated processes. If we look next at forecasting, so on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see results since 2017. And the green band says these are currently for 2025, 44% of organizations say that their forecasts they produce are great or good. And you'll notice that it's gradually improving since some COVID times. But if you look at the bottom, again, there's a stubborn bunch of people who say their forecasts are just poor. They're just not really worth what they're used for. On the right-hand side, we look at the timeliness of those forecasts. It's interesting to find that over 55% of organizations say it takes them at least 5 days in order to produce a forecast. And when events are changing fast, you've got to ask yourself, is that fast enough? Now, the secret to accurate forecasts that we'll show a little bit later on is actually driver-based models. These models reflect how the organization operates and how it's impacted by external events. And what we find in the survey for this year, only 17% of organizations have fully driver-based models. And I'm going to tell you about the impact of that a little bit later on. Interestingly, 43% of organizations don't use driver-based models. They simply have adding up models. And that impacts the time it takes to do a forecast and the quality of a forecast. Also, the ability to have a driver-based forecast really impacts how you can do scenarios, because in order to have multiple forecasts, in other words, to say, well, if this changes by 10%, what is the impact? You've got to be able to do that to the drivers of performance. And we find that only 18% are able to look at the impact of change quickly. And 19% say they can't do that at all. So let's look at data and how organizations. This was a surprise. If you look at that chart on the left-hand side, you'll say that only 17% of organizations say that their data quality is good, is very good. That is down from 22% last year, which again is still down from 20% the previous year. It seems that data quality isn't improving. However, the acceptable bit in the middle is taking some of that. 25% say that the data quality is just not acceptable. On the right-hand side, we look at how often is that data updated. Again, this was a surprise in that only 31% of organizations are actually able to update it on a daily basis, with the majority, 48%, saying they have to wait to the end of the month before they get access to later data. And in a data economy where we have data coming at us from all over the place, it's surprising it takes that long. It's not surprising, by the way, that the top priority for transformation at 18% is that organizations said, look, they just need to have a single source of the truth. Now, key to having trusted data is actually the use of technology. And so if we have a look at the fourth pillar of FP&A performance, technology, on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that spreadsheets are still the main planning application for FP&A, but it is coming down. So it's 45% this year, come down from 60% of 4 years ago. Again, interestingly on this is that it's around 34% of organizations are using older planning systems. Only 21% are using the more modern planning applications, which have the latest technology innovations within them. 43% of organizations said the last time they had an upgrade to their planning system was more than 5 years ago, which means they're almost certain they're not taking advantage of the latest developments in technology, such as the use of artificial intelligence. In this year's survey, we found that 8% are currently using machine learning for forecasting. That's just slightly up from last year. For the first time, we actually asked about the use of Gen AI applications, things like Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, and 18% said that they're using them for FP&A purposes. And we think this is going to be a big area in the time to come. So how does all this impact on FP&A time, the fifth element of our best practice? What's really interesting here is that most organizations, on the bottom right there, 46% of FP&A time is spent on data collection and validation. And you've got to ask yourself, is that really the best use of FP&A's time? Because for every amount of time you spend on data collection and validation is less time you can spend on generating insights. And you'll notice that this really hasn't changed much over the years. On the plus side, on the left-hand side there, 45% of FP&A teams are recognized or endorsed as business partners, though only 9% are treated as strategic advisors. And the most sought after skill today in FP&A is actually business partnering. Now, we look at these 5 areas, and in doing the survey and doing the analysis, we found that if FP&A could improve in some of those areas, they would improve their overall performance and impact on the organization. And because of time, I'm just going to look at 2 of them. The first one is the impact of data quality. So what we did here, we looked at those organizations who said that they had good or best in class data quality, and we looked at where they spent their time. And you'll see in this chart here that 42% of time, if like the complete reverse of the survey findings, is actually spent on generating insights and driving actions, compared with the average of 42% that's spent on data collection and data validation. And if you look at the bottom, those organizations that have poor quality data spend 59% of the time, nearly 60% of their time, just on those data things. If we look on the right-hand side now, we look at the impact of data quality on forecast accuracy. And we find that those with good data quality, 80% of them consider their forecast to be great or good. A huge difference. The other area I'll just have a look at is that sort of driver-based models. If organizations are using driver-based models, what we find is that their forecasts, 77%, say that they are great or accurate. We also find that organizations who are using driver-based models say that they are 44% and say that they are optimized to perform. And also like 78% of them say that they make most of their decisions in data. So just a small insight. I've just got 2 more slides left here. So what's the future? Okay, from the survey again, what we found is that the top priorities for FP&A is getting that data right, unifying that data into it's like a place where they can easily get access to it and then analyze it. Strengthening their ability to partner with the organization is also a top priority, along with upgrading systems. But on the right-hand side, what we find is that the biggest obstacles FP&A face are budget constraints, also justifying return on investment. So If I was to summarize the survey results, this is what I would say. These are the 5 areas where FP&A need to excel at in order to do their job. When it comes to integrated processes, well, integration is still pretty rare. It's interesting. It's something that doesn't need technology to do. It's something that needs a mindset to say, no, we actually are going to integrate these particular applications, these particular planning processes. When it comes to producing forecasts and running scenarios, it happens on a regular basis, but it's very rarely agile. Organizations struggle to do this quickly. When it comes to data, despite the availability of tools, and perhaps it's because of the huge increase in the amount of data that's available, there's still much to do in order to get data to people, to FP&A in a format they can use to analyze. Technology, okay, the use of technology, particularly the new cloud planning platforms, is increasing, but the use of AI is still very low, we believe. And finally, skills and influence of FP&A staff. We find the investment over the past couple of years in FP&A has actually slowed down, and that does impact their ability to perform. So I hope you're able to download the survey and take a look. In the time allowed, I can only just look at like a quick summary, but hopefully it's given you a taste of what's there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for your amazing summary. That's exactly what we needed for the short period of time. I'll definitely share the link for the survey right at the end of this event, and you can already find it within the presentation attached in the handout section. Amazing presentation, lots of information in a short time. We might need some time to digest it. Meanwhile, let me ask you a question. And that's a question about how do you feel after seeing some of these survey results? So let me launch this poll. And I really would like everyone present to answer this question. How do you feel after seeing some of the survey results? Motivated. My team is best in class. Encouraged. We are on the right track. More to do. Determined. Big gaps, but we will bridge them. And the last one, worried. We are far behind and struggling. That is a pulse check I'm really looking forward to. Most of you have voted. I'll give you last 30 seconds for your votes. Now let's close this poll and see the results. Oh, we have a winner. Number 3, determined. Big gaps, but we will bridge them. 46% of our participants today. Another quite popular option, encouraged. We are on the right track. More to do. And we have 11% worried. We are far behind and struggling. And 3% really hoped for some percentage here, motivated. My team is best in class. Michael, what do you think? Are you
Yeah,
surprised by the results?
no, it's about what we see in the surveys. But my one big thing to agree is that the way you improve it, it's a continuous process. It's continually looking at what you do and how you can improve it. There's no doubt that technology plays a big role in this, in order to get data right. But never get discouraged. You can tackle these one at a time, and certainly from the report and the survey, and we've got a maturity model we've developed as well. Just by doing some of the little things, you can see big improvements. And I think Pras will be covering some of these things in his presentation later. So it's something that we always have to work at. It's always going to be moving forwards and trying to do better.
Thank you. Thank you for this encouraging comment. By the way, if you have any questions to Michael, don't hesitate to ask them through our chat. We are already receiving some very interesting questions to you, Michael. So we have something to look forward to in our Q&A section. And now let's move on to our discussion. And what I wanted to discuss with both of you, Michael and Pras, I really wanted to speak about real improvement. Many organizations adopt modern tools but fail to see real improvement. Why is this happening and what can be done? So, Michael, let me start with you, Pras. So, what do you think? Why is this happening and what can be done?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of it lies in the process. I mean, we know the technology has changed dramatically and drastically over the last few years. There's analytics, planning software, data, all blended and combined together. Yet, if your processes haven't caught up to take advantage of the technology, if you're still caught up in a system where you're still doing a forecast at the beginning of the month versus on-demand forecasts, if you're not taking advantage of doing real scenario planning based on scenarios available to you. Ultimately, if you're not adapting your processes to meet the technology available to you, you're not going to see the improvement. It's basically taking, um, you know, a poor engine and putting it into a shiny new tool. But again, you still have the poor engine in there. I think you have to really upgrade your engine and upgrade, your plumbing and everything internally as well to make sure that you're providing the best service to your stakeholders and your shareholders as well. There's a lot of areas where FP&A can provide value. Technology can help lead it, but ultimately it's a matter of changing your processes to reflect what the art of the possible is with technology.
Right, thank you. Thank you for this angle. Let me pass on to you, Michael. Many organizations adopt modern tools but fail to see real improvement. Why is it happening and what can be done?
Yeah, I think the first thing to remember is that tools are just enablers. They just enable something. And one of the things I used to say for many years, if organizations have a bad and broken planning process, throwing technology at it means they still end up with a bad and broken planning process, except it's now delivered at the speed of light. So what use is that? So I very much endorse Pras's view, and that is for organizations to say, why are we doing this? So for example, if you're doing a budget, why are we budgeting? What's the purpose of the budget? What do we want to achieve with the budget? Hopefully it's not just putting a number by the chart of accounts. Once you know what the purpose you're trying to do, say, okay, what do we need to measure to do that? What things do we need to assign resources? And then to, if like, design the processes from what you want to achieve. That's how you do it. I see many, or I used to see many organizations just throwing technology, thinking it's a silver bullet, and it's not. It's just a bullet. Okay, so it's important, as Pras said, is that you've got to determine what is it you're trying to achieve? What is the process trying to achieve? Once you've done that, then use technology as an enabler to help you to do it better.
Amazing answer. Thank you for that, Michael. And we are moving to the second presentation of today's session. Pras Chatterjee will be speaking about a better path forward for FP&A. Pras, let me pass the stage to you, and that is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Olga, and thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to walk through a few key insights that I found in the FP&A Trends Survey that all of you completed this year, and things that really stood out to me, especially those that reflect, areas where teams are struggling and what high performers are doing differently, and how effectively we as FP&A can move forward. So the first part I'd like to talk about is really forecasting without agility. And one of the stats that came, out to me that was quite prevalent that Michael discussed earlier as well is that, um, forecasting without agility, it really takes almost 10 plus days for many organizations, for 30% of organizations to forecast, which is absolutely astounding in this day and age. Now, what is one of the core activities of FP&A? It is forecasting. It's beyond the annual budget. It is forecasting. But nearly 30% of organizations that responded this year take over 10 days to produce a forecast. But the scarier part is only 15% can do it under 2 days. And that's really a huge problem in today's environment because we know that there's a lot of volatility. It's constant. And the business, our shareholders, our stakeholders, the people we're trying to do business partnering with, they're not waiting for us to catch up. And yet our forecast cycles often do. It takes too much time. So I think what to me this shows is that too many organizations are dealing with fragmented systems, multiple manual handoffs of data and processes. And, as Michael talked about earlier, too many layers of reconciliation, of matching and mapping out and validating the data. One of the things I like to say is that, if your forecast takes 2 weeks to produce, it's no longer a forecast. It's basically some sort of historical artifact. And that's really what many of the participants in this survey are sharing in this case. But what we're also seeing is that really agile teams are building processes where, forecasting is fast, it's continuous, and effectively it's embedded into day-to-day operations. And how do you get there? Well, that starts by simplifying the technology stack and reducing manual effort. I mean, ultimately, it's not just about speed, but it's also about staying relevant in how we support decisions. And I think that's something that FP&A can look at as well. Knowing that there's a utopia out there where they can achieve speed, but they can achieve better accuracy as well, and forecast with, agility, not without agility. They can forecast on demand, and then they can be leaders in terms of how they share that data, move that data, and go forward as well. The next part I want to talk about is disconnected by design. The really scary part to me is that only 1 in 10 teams achieve planning integration. Now, why is forecasting so slow for organizations? I think one of the root causes fragmentation of planning. That one of the things we know is that planning exists everywhere. Everybody plans, not just FP&A, but everybody in some way, shape, or form is doing some sort of budget or forecast, whether it's marketing, planning their events, planning their marketing programs to support sales who are planning revenue by quota, by territory, by product or whatnot, operations, doing a demand plan to help match the sales forecast. Everyone is doing some sort of planning across the enterprise. But the other part is that it's not really truly integrated. Only 11% say that they've achieved a truly integrated plan across strategic, financial, and operational areas. So that strat plan that the C-level executives come out at the start of the year or the start of the summer, whenever your budgeting cycle starts, and they come up with a high-level leadership plan. And that leadership plan, which extends from now till the next 4 years, laying a baseline of a vision, does it really connect with the financial and operational areas as well? And that's a massive grab, because without the integration between these plans, there's always this exercise of reconciling, not aligning. So effectively, when the workforce plan is connected from the P&L, when CapEx isn't connected to cash flow, and when operational drivers, and that's key, the drivers from operations, don't flow into the financials, you're left with isolated plans that don't reflect how the business actually runs. You're still planning in silos. And the main barrier in this case isn't even technology. The technology is there. The technology is there to support this. Rather, it's structure, it's a silos, it's conflicting ownership across the enterprise, who owns what plan, and the lack of cross-functional collaboration. I know FP&A Trends for the longest time has been talking about business partnering, and that's something that we also see in this survey that organizations are struggling to do, whereas something that best-in-class FP&A organizations do provide. And we also see that high-level FP&A teams and high-performing FP&A teams are starting to break that down. Why and how? By using a single shared model, common drivers across the enterprise, and effectively a unified planning process that connects strategy to execution. Now, let's move on to forecasting with confidence, because better models do deserve better forecasts. So the next insight that jumped out at me that Michael also talked about as well was driver-based planning and how it correlates with better performance. Now, there are teams that are using fully driver-based models, and they rate their forecasts as good or great 77% of the time. That's nearly 3 times better than those using no driver-based or no logic or basic driver logic as well. And that's not just a coincidence. It's because when plans are built on real business drivers like volume, sales, price, productivity, headcount, or whatnot, they're more accurate, more responsive, and more importantly for finance and FP&A, they're so much easier to explain. It also opens the door to AI and predictive capabilities, which depend on clean, driver-based structures to function properly. We've all heard about AI over again over the last few years, and it's going to perpetually accelerate. And we're going to hear about best-in-class companies that are using AI to drive forward. But they don't just get there magically or automatically. They get there because they've cleansed their data. They've got data that's meaningful, but they also have multiple drivers that drive their decisions. And those drivers and help create a much better data model for them, especially when it comes to AI and machine learning. Because ultimately, your AI and machine learning models can only run and provide quality results based on quality data and quality drivers. These also models, especially driver-based models, help us to simulate scenarios. For example, if X, Y, or Z happens in operations, how does that flow into the P&L, the cash flow statement, or the balance sheet? Ultimately, driver-based planning is one of the clearest enablers of agility, and it's a foundational capability for teams that are looking to mature their forecasting and scenario thinking. And scenarios are extremely important in this case as well. I think in the stats that Michael talked about as well, so there's so many organizations that lack the ability to provide a scenario immediately or do a forecast, as I talked about earlier. And scenario planning, especially in a volatile and important environment such as this, is so important. And I think part of the results, just reflecting on what I talked about earlier, about why scenarios and forecasts don't succeed, is because of the lack of drivers available to them. If your business and your data models are built on drivers, those drivers ultimately let you work with different scenarios to do best case, worst case, upside, downside. Ultimately, it lets FP&A and finance not forecast and think about what happened yesterday, but rather articulate and give a best-in-class vision of what's about to happen tomorrow. And that lets us, as FP&A, become true business partners. So now I'm going to spend some time talking about a better path forward for FP&A. And there is a better path. So what does that path look like? Well, based on the data and what I see in the market, there are 5 major shifts that I think FP&A teams need to embrace. Number 1, unify on a single platform. There's way too many teams that are using a mix of disconnected tools. And ultimately, a unified platform creates consistency, it improves collaboration, and it helps save time. And I promise you, a unified platform is available for finance. And a unified platform may involve those hard decisions. It may involve working with your IT and not working on based on what IT tells you to do based on a scripted decision they've made with a mega vendor, but rather having an honest decision about with IT about, are you as finance going to get the data that's available to you and meaningful as well? Even as Michael pointed out earlier, if data is available weekly or on a monthly basis, is that data meaningful? Is it unified? Is it available in context? Is it harmonized immediately so you can drive better decisions? The next piece is adopt a shared data model. And what happens with that? Well, that gives everyone, finance and operations, a common language, one version of the truth, with real trust in the data. There's only one way to make the world of integrated financial planning or connected planning or unified planning or XP&A, whatever you choose to call it. That is with a shared data model where finance can look at drivers that are being used by operations, whether it's headcount data, salaries, benefits, sales, production costs, or whatnot, but also dive into the data of operations to see how those plans are being driven. And I promise you, that does exist. I work with, and I've seen best-in-class companies that have a shared data model, not just for FP&A, but across the enterprise, and from the smallest companies to large-scale companies as well, giving them a shared version of the truth. The next step is make driver-based planning the standard. As we saw, it improves accuracy, it enables scenario planning, and it's a foundation for predictive analytics. Finally, we're seeing an uptick in this, but embrace AI and automation. AI is not replacing finance, but it's removing the grunt work. It's helping surfacing insights, marrying machine intelligence with human intelligence, and giving us in FP&A time to focus on strategic priorities. And then, shift to continuous planning. The annual budget is no longer enough. Leading edge teams are using rolling forecasts, scenario modeling, and real-time updates to stay ahead. They're not talking about what happened yesterday. As I mentioned before, they're talking about what's about to happen tomorrow. Now, these shifts aren't easy, but they're achievable. And they're what's going to move FP&A from really being reactive to strategic, from fragmented to unified, and from lagging to leading. Thank you.
Thank you, Pras. I was fighting with my microphone. Thank you for your presentation, and I'm really enjoyed all these parts and all these individual steps. By the way, we have received enormous number of questions after your presentation, and you see round of applause as well for you. So thank you for that. If you still have questions to Michael or Pras, don't hesitate to ask them. Meanwhile, I'll start another polling question. After process presentation, I would like to ask all of you, what is your team's top priority for FP&A improvement? Let me launch this one and see what do you feel like your top priority after hearing all those survey results. So is it strengthen business partnering across organization? Create a single unified source of data? Upgrade our planning systems and tools, or adopt AI and emerging technologies for forecasting. So let's see which of those will win the most of your votes today. Strengthening business partnering, creating a single unified source of truth, upgrade planning systems and tools, or adopting AI and emerging technologies. Most of you have already voted. So last 30 seconds, and we will close this poll and share the results with everyone. You know what? We have almost even distribution between all the answers with a slight winner, and that is create a single unified source of data, 31% of respondents. All the rest are almost equal. 24% goes to upgrading of planning systems, and 22% go to strengthening business partnering and adopting AI and emerging technologies. Pras, what do you think? Are you surprised at all?
I'm not surprised. To be honest, I mean, I was expecting it to be a unified source of data because I think finances for longest time, especially FP&A, struggled. And we see, I think Michael showed earlier, there was a stat about how some of the data point, I mean, people are okay with the data they have, but they're not excelling with the data. And I think that's because there's more and more data on a daily basis. There's operational data, there's CRM systems, HR systems, supply chain systems, and even the ERP, and bringing that together. And I think having for FP&A and finance a single unified data and a platform of data where the data exists and it's data that they can most importantly trust, because once FP&A trusts the data, everybody else trusts FP&A. And we all know when finance loses trust, they lose faith in the organization. The dream of business partnering is over. So I think everything here comes from a single unified source of data, and that's why it's reflected there.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for connecting all those options. Meanwhile, let us move to the discussion related to the topic, and Pras has already touched this point, so come back to me, join me on the camera, and what I would like to discuss with both of you, with Michael and with Pras, is why, with so many teams still struggling with fragmented data, what are the most practical first steps to create a unified data source? Michael, let's start with you here. What do you think? How we can move here?
Okay, I think Pras mentioned it. Today we're faced with more and more data, and unifying data doesn't mean necessarily bringing it all into one place. It means actually having dynamic links so you can actually get to it, but also in a way that you can then analyze it. The most practical steps that we find organizations is they typically start off with one particular area where they've got a problem. For example, forecasting sales or forecasting revenue. So what we've seen organizations do, all the data surrounding the forecasting of sales, including trying to identify the drivers, they focus on getting the quality of that data, maybe just for one product or one region. Get that right first of all. That way, you're eating the elephant a bit at a time, rather than trying to eat it all at once. once you've got one region or one product sorted out, you then know what you need to do to move to the next region or to the next product. And that's how we see organizations do it. They do it a bit of time because that way they get some quick wins. They know what they've got to do, and it justifies and gives them, if like, confidence to go on and expand that use.
Right, right. Back to you, Pras. I know you have partially answered that already, but if you have something to add, how we can practically create this unified data source.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is for finance to take an inventory of what they need for best in class data, best in class processes or whatnot, and look at the data from across the enterprise, look at across FP&A, and then realize that finance deserves better. We know that sales has CRM to work with, marketing has marketing systems, HR has HRIS systems, there's accountants have ERP to deal with. Finance also has finance systems to deal with, and they deserve best in class where they can look at the data available to them, how the data comes together. And then I think the next step is, as being a business partner, work with IT. Work with IT to lay out what you as finance need to be a best in class organization. When you need the data, why you want to change your process. You don't want technology, as Michael and I talked about earlier, to just replicate your existing process. You want technology to be an enabler to modify and upgrade your processes so ultimately you can deliver better value to your stakeholders and to your shareholders. So I think, again, adding to what Michael said, it's also a matter of doing an inventory, talking to IT, and realizing what is best for you as finance, not what's best for IT, not what their deals they're making with mega vendors or whatnot. What is best for you as finance?
Right, right. Thank you for both of your answers. We are moving to another part of the event, which is my favorite, is key takeaways. So please think about if we have to remember only one idea from the whole event, what would that be? What is a key idea from this event for you, Michael?
Okay, for me, the key takeaway is look at those 5 areas we've covered. Integrated processes, scenario ready forecasts, data quality, technology. Take an inventory, as Press said, where do you stand today? Where do you stand? What's lacking? And then make a plan from that to improve those different areas.
Right, right. That's a very valid piece of advice. Pras, what is the key takeaway for you?
I think the key takeaway for me from what I see in the stat is that the future of FP&A, it's integrated. We're bringing all the businesses and data together. It's intelligent with AI, and it's insight driven as well. Letting finance consume all of this, they're getting away from all the manual tasks, and they're giving insights and predictions and guidance on where the business is going. And ultimately, for finance, it's not whether they have to evolve, it's how fast and how quickly they can evolve.
Right. Thank you. It's almost philosophical message from you, Pras. Thank you for that. And you know what? Let's move to Q&A because we have so many interesting questions today. I'll start with you, Pras, and I have a question that's addressed to you that appeared during your presentation. If you find your machine learning algorithm already forecast like 45% accuracy, without considering external drivers, only based on historical data, would you still continue on the driver journey?
I would. Because drivers only help you make it that much more accurate. I mean, you can only go up in accuracy by having the drivers. Beyond that, drivers also give you um, beyond the accuracy in your machine learning and AI forecasts, it also gives you insights into your business, right? And it helps you do better scenario planning, scenario modeling, where you can shift the scales on the drivers to do, again, as I pointed out, upside, downside, best case, worst case, and that also helps to lead to better scenario planning. So I think what Michael showed earlier, there was a stat something about how there's only a small percentage of companies that can produce a forecast or do a scenario in 2 days or less. That number has to move up. Imagine in volatile times, someone comes to you with a forecast based on tariff disruption, the supply chain, or FX, and if it takes you more than 2 days, as I think I used the term earlier, it's a historical artifact.
Right, right. Thank you for this. And Michael, question to you, again, addressed directly to you. So on the integrated process, Key element is operations involvement, as they are owners of data generation and key stakeholders for decision making. When you don't have all the elements or participation from these operational areas, how to support an integrated FP&A process?
I think it starts out by saying at the top of the, if you like, I like to do a kind of a mind map. What is it the organization is trying to achieve? One might be, okay, we want to dominate a particular market space. So how are we going to do that? And then we'll break that down. And of course, financial planning is about assigning, if like, monetary value sets. But operations is really key because operations say, so if we're going to dominate in a particular area of products, we need to make sure we're manufacturing that. But also we need to make sure that if like the forecasts are in line with that. So to me, it's about getting people together and agreeing how does the different if like planning elements of operation, how do they fit and connect to if like the strategic plan. Now you could be, and today with today's planning platforms, it's possible that you don't have one big megalithic model. What you do, you have multiple models that are passing information to each other dynamically. So it's really key that what, if like what happens at an operational level has to connect in somehow to what is required at a strategic level. Because if not, they're disconnected. And it means that senior managers are making assumptions about performance and direction, which operations don't believe. And that way, no one's going to win. So it's really important that someone sits down and tries to connect these pieces together.
Right, right. Thank you for this practical advice. Pras, I have another question really, addressed to you, but it's well connected to the topic we just discussed with Michael. And that is, how can you reduce planning or forecasting time and improve output analysis when it takes your stakeholders more than 1 month to provide the relevant data for the process?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that why does it take the stakeholders over a month? And maybe they don't have access to the right data or the right systems. They might be working in spreadsheets and struggling the same way you or others are as well. So that's why I mentioned it. It makes sense to take a holistic inventory of the data you need, what the output, like what the throughput of that data is back to you, and what the bottlenecks for that data are. And if it's systems on their end, I mean, modern FP&A systems are not just FP&A. We should take out the word FP&A and make them modern planning and analysis systems because they extend across the enterprise. I know this because I've seen this, and they blend in and harmonize all the data, which I talked about, which is the nirvana state for finance. So, for example, if it takes HR X amount of time to update the headcount, and that headcount is needed for finance to do their salaries and benefits as an expense line or something to that extent. I think it's a matter of extending your FP&A systems, your planning systems, to include HR, so that HR can properly have data that's needed for them, so they can build in the drivers, so they can provide that data to you as well. Going back to what Michael said, technology will help make this easier, but it's about the process as well. And this is an enabler for you to leverage technology to change the process that's causing the bottleneck on that side. Now, it might not happen immediately. From a month, it might go to 3 weeks to 2 weeks, but it might be a target that you're looking to hit, and ultimately build that bridge over time to get to where you want.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. I saw some thumbs up. So really that your answered actually it really answered the question. Michael, another question for you. Again, a challenging one. How can we practically move from annual to 6 months planning cycles? And what is a realistic cadence for rolling forecasts in volatile industries?
Okay, so the first thing I'd say is if you look at your annual plan, for many organizations, it's like getting the chart of accounts, all 1,500 accounts, and putting numbers against them. You're never going to do that on a continuous basis or a 6 month. It's too much. Instead, you've got to say what information, what we're planning. It might be headline, for example, financial numbers. It might be headline expense numbers. And that's what we want to plan. And that's where these drives are really important to help fill that in. So in terms of moving from annual to, if like, a continuous planning, is to say we've got to cut down the amount of manual effort we put into doing that annual plan. We've got to rely more on a driver-based system that can produce a lot of the information. And then say to yourselves, well, just because we have this plan going 12 months, then maybe we should be modifying it or updating it on a quarterly basis. If things aren't going as planned, there's no point in flogging a dead horse. Um, it is hard because it's a cultural thing. You know, many people have in their minds that annual planning is this 2 month, 3 month exercise. But instead, I've seen a lot of organizations who then say, well, look, what we actually do, it's the forecasts become the plan. Now, you can't keep changing, if you like, the goalposts. So if the forecast says we're not going to plan, you need to understand why. And that's where these drivers can come in handy. Which drivers aren't working? So it's a tough question. It's one that's easy to say, but it starts out by saying, let's not replicate what we're doing on an annual basis. Instead, let's focus what is essential for us in order to operate this business. And it's usually key financial numbers, key expense numbers. The detail behind that, that's not really, I think, the purpose of planning.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for this motivational answer. And you know what? I have many more questions, but I'll pick one and I'll ask both of you to answer because I think that's kind of a good closing question for us for today about the use of AI. The use of AI in FP&A remains rare. 8% in forecasting, 18% generative AI, mainly for summaries. Does this corroborate the view that we have arrived at the throw of AI disillusionment? So basically, we are disillusioned in AI and its potential. Michael, let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, I think to begin with, AI was very difficult for newcomers. You had to have like data science expertise. You had to have special programs. Now that all gets embedded within the planning platforms, AI becomes a lot easier. Now, again, AI isn't a bullet, a silver bullet. And there are two parts to AI. One is actually what I call the machine learning, which can work on the historic data to give you trends. Not every organization is going to be able to make use of that, partially because they don't have the data and that. But certainly when it comes to things like the co-pilots and the chat GPTs to do that analysis. In fact, I know one organization, they use AI to all the results they produce, it puts it into a common narrative that everybody can understand. So I think it's a question of dipping your toe in the water into some areas and move from there. There's no doubt it will change over the next 3 to 5 years. It will drastically change what FP&A do. So the point now is get stuck in now, but learn out what bits of AI will be useful to you, and it will be either generative AI and machine learning.
Right, right. Thank you. Pras, what do you think? Are we disillusioned in AI by now, or on the contrary, it has big potential?
I think it has massive potential, and we're just on the cusp of it right now. Obviously, Gen AI is something that everybody uses, whether it's ChatGPT, asking questions, or using different bots or agents to ask questions. And I think that's just the first start. But there's so much else as well. I think when Michael showed his stat about how over 50% or 40% of finance time is still spent reconciling and gathering data, that can all be automated through AI and leaving us as FP&A practitioners to really analyze the data. And when it comes to analyzing the data, there's so much that AI can do for us as well, especially if you have the right drivers and the right data model, or you get started on that path. You can use AI for variance analysis, right? To like go down into your rate and volume variances, your mix variances, and understand what are the outliers there as well. Have AI understand what are your threshold limits and do anomaly detection for you as well, and give alerts to you, and then you as FP&A make proactive decisions. I mean, AI will never be 100% accurate, but it'll give you as FP&A guidance and a tool so you can spend much more time driving insights based on using AI as a as an assistant effectively, like nothing more than that. So I think we're just on the cusp of it at this point in time.
Amazing. Thank you. That's a kind of huge flow of motivation from both of you to all of us to actually improve further and use the survey results as a good base for improvement. We are approaching the end of the event. Thank you all for your amazing questions, and we will try to answer some of them in writing after the event. What is left for me is just thank our technology sponsor, OneStream, for making this survey and this event possible. If you would like to download the survey, here is the link available in your presentations. So definitely read the survey. It will answer some of your questions as well. I would like to let all of you know how you can connect to us, to FP&A Trends Global Community. There are multiple channels you can choose from. Don't leave just yet. Please fill in a very short survey right after this event, just short questionnaire to help us improve further. Thank you all for being here. Big thank you to our speakers for sharing your wisdom with us, for sharing amazing insights with us. Have a good evening and have a good summer break, and we will see you all in September. Goodbye.
All right.